the earth and transform it. Must rule the earth and transform it.
So today we're going to talk about moving beyond control. Control is something that happens to all of us. We learn these levels of, well, we don't learn them. They're passed down generational. Also, with everything that we learn, school, all of it teaches us to control who we are, right? We have to control who we are so that we don't appear different than the mainstream. Now, this control hits us on many different levels. People ask me, about what I do as a hypnotherapist. Well, very early on, I realized that I didn't want to be the regular type of hypnotherapist. What I wanted to do was to help people dehypnotize, to come out of, to wake up from the hypnosis that was going on. So my whole life has been spent working this idea, these levels, understanding how we've been hypnotized, controlled, these sorts of things, and to help people come out of that sort of situation. What I discovered is that we have this timeline, right? And there's this timeline. We have the present moment, and this is our past, right? And this is our future. Now, what happens is that we have certain little things that are in our past that inhibits us from vibrating at our highest rate. Okay? It inhibits us. It's like it stops us from doing that. So because of what's happened in the past to us, whether that's in the family, or if that's school, or if that's whatever it is, we have a tendency to just simply repeat what was happening there out into our future, and then we get it back as experience. And so we get stuck in this loop that I call, Groundhog Day. Now, with this, with this past, future, uh, we, we we literally don't necessarily need it. Uh, I share with people that you take 5 people in, if you have people, 5 kids in the family, 2 or 3 or whatever, but there's that many renditions of what went on in the home. Same thing with a car accident. You got 5 different renditions of what happened with the car accident that everyone's seen. Now, that means that our past and our memories are subjective to us, which means that you can change things. And this is a delightful thing, that you can change things, right? So what if you could start to rewrite things that happened in the past? Well, my idea is that you have every right to do that. You don't need to be held by that. You could go and, whoops, that was supposed to be something else. And we're in the chat screen too soon. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to have to come back to the whiteboard there. But it's actually a blackboard. A real blackboard. So we have these certain things in the past. What if we could rewrite them? What if we could change them? What if we could pop out of these situations that continuously plague us in our present moment, right? I can't do this because blah, I can't go forward because blah, whatever it is. Now, what if we could change the frequency of these? What if we could unfreeze these little children that are inside these frozen spots that we end up reacting to things with, right? What if we could change those? Well, then that would free up the present moment, and then you're not controlled anymore. So it's all about coming out of that control matrix. And when you allow yourself to go through a healing process where you let go of this doesn't have to take a long time. It can be very quick, and you can raise your vibration really, really fast. Now, what happens when we do that? What happens when we raise our vibration really quickly? Well, then what happens is everything that we pre-manifested here in our future based on this back here, these things, all of a sudden now we're free. Now we're free to create what we want in our future based on a new vibration that then comes back to us as healing, as truth, as love, as whatever vibration you want it to be. Now, there's a great amount of information out there that doesn't want you to know this, that doesn't want you to know that you could just simply raise your vibration in the present moment and come out of these paradigms, that you could shift these really quickly and raise your vibration and get on with it. They kind of want you to stay in that frequency for some time. And that frequency, that past frequency, or the control frequency, is now we're looking at it on the outside. Now we're starting to see it, a lot of it, on the outside. There's ideas of people saying that they have control over you, right? We know that we're the 99%, and there's only a few percent that's saying that they're controlling us. Well, that's as silly as it can be, but it's working, right? Because people fall for it. And what would it feel like to be out of that control? That's when you start creating outside of that control matrix. Because what would it feel like to be outside of that control, to have your free will, to be able to do things that you want to do? What would happen if you started to create reality that war doesn't exist in your life? Now, we all hear this, but let me really explain it, because most of you aren't in a war right now. But they have you convinced there is one, and that you are living one. And the more that we start to think outside of that confine of what they're trying to convince us of, once we step out of that confine, we begin to really realize how free we are, because it's only being told to us that we're in that sort of control. Control doesn't exist with a free being. You're an unbounded spirit. You have never been born, nor will you ever die. This is an idea here. This idea that we're living this paradigm. And when you step out of that in here, when you start feeling freer, I'm freer than this. I'm freer than what's going on in the world here. I'm freer than that. When you can look at an animal and see the same life that is you in that reflection of that little animal, right? And you start connecting with that little animal, and that animal speaking back to you telepathically, you can hear them. You're moving beyond the main matrix. What will happen is eventually we move out of this confined idea that that this is all there is. We have the ability to move beyond and experience all sorts of consciousness here on the planet, all sorts of connections. I remember a few times in my life when I connected with a deer in my younger days. And I walked up to that deer slowly, and the deer would put its head down, and then I'd put my head down, and I mimicked the deer. And it would turn its head, and I'd turn my head, and I just kept copying the behavior of the deer. And you know what? I got so damn close to that deer, I could have reached out and petted it. But that was just enough for that deer, and it was gone, right? Another time, and that was supposed to be an impossibility, right? Especially with the wild deer. Now, another thing is that I had this little, it's called a prairie chicken up here. They're wild. And this little prairie chicken, well, it started coming around more and doing, coming around, and I finally got to where I could pick it up, and I picked it up, and I would pet it, and I'd put it down, and it was pissed off for a little while, and then it would run away, but then it would come back. It was like, what's going on here? Because that felt good, right? And so it would come around again, and I'd pick it up again, and I'd pet it, and I could tell when it was getting upset. And then next thing you know, I had this prairie chicken following me everywhere in the yard, right? And I learned a thing about the prairie chicken is that if you turn him upside down on his back, his little feet go like this and he can't get up. And that was a good thing sometimes, because I was, using the power saw, and he'd come and try to pick at the power saw. And, that's not healthy for him. So I'd pick him up, turn him up on his back, and then continue cutting what I needed to cut, and then flip him back over so he could carry on, so he wouldn't get hurt. But I mean, you could start to bond with animals. There is so many things when you start popping out of this control matrix, and this is what my whole career is about for me, is to help people pop out of this matrix that was falsely created. Our parents were involved in it because their parents were involved in it, because it went all the way down the line. So it's no one's actual fault, except that this was an ongoing limitation. Now, there's an upward spiral and there's a downward spiral. And you can hear it in what people communicate to you. They'll talk about, well, there's not much you can do, and or this is done to me now, and that's it, I'm done. You know what I mean? That's the downward spiral. And then there's an upward spiral, and it's literally language that is the upward spiral or the downward spiral. If you turn it around and you start saying, to yourself, I wonder if there is something I can do. I wonder if there is, oh, maybe your meditation would be a spark of light that would start inside of me and begin to expand, and nothing could change that. Nothing could do anything to it. It just starts to expand, and as it expands, it heals me, reminds me of my original blueprint of my body, and starts transforming my life automatically, right? The thing of it is that our conscious minds have been so conditioned to the limitation that sometimes we have to let this go to the automatic aspect of us and just say, I'm going to start this spark of light and it's going to expand, and who knows how far this is going to go, right, with myself. And you become more aware and more aware of how expansive you can become simply by getting out of your own way of it, really, right? And getting out of your own way of it is a big thing. That's the conscious mind has been well programmed, but this great part of you, the God within you, the goddess within you, hasn't been. It's still there, right? It's pushed to the side. We need to bring it back, but it's still there, and all it's wanting is for you to start to ask it in ways that it understands. And what I mean by that is you want to work with metaphors a lot when it comes to this part of the mind. You want to work with metaphors, and metaphors are what would it feel like, and what would that feeling look like? What would it sound like? And as you start to create your own freedom, you can begin to put your own metaphors to this unfoldment. Well, I would start to feel like this, you might say, and that would look like, I don't know, something expanding. And as I step into it, I feel it more, right? Each day becoming more and more of this expansion. You can start to challenge yourself to expand more and more. Coming out of the control. You begin to find at the end of the day is that you are that unbounded spirit. Nothing has ever controlled you. They've only convinced you of control. They've only convinced you that you can't do things. They've only sold you things, like bad salesmen selling you bad products. And they sold you on the ideas of limitation. But truly, you are a lot freer than that, always. You can explore all sorts of beautiful relationships with everything. I seen a little while back, I seen where they hooked up these sensors on leaves of plants and then hooked it to a synthesizer. And the plant was sending out a vibration, and when it recognized that vibration was actually it, right? It took a little time for it to recognize that it was sending out a frequency out its leaves, and those sensors were picking it up and playing the synthesizer as a note. Well, my God, people, the music that came out of that plant was something else once it realized it was itself playing. And it was quickly learning and adjusting. And I would have never thought that a plant would have this sentient consciousness as it does, because the music was absolutely beautiful. And if you ever want to look it up on YouTube, go ahead, plant playing music or whatever. It is beautiful music. And they have a tour now. They're going around, and they're playing this music, and from the plants, and it's beautiful. So as we come out of this, we're learning more and more. I mean, I know there's a heck of a lot of real wild stuff going on right now in the world of things, but this is really only, folks, this is only the death of of the control matrix that you're watching. It's coming to a close. It's coming to an end. There's this new vibration that we're stepping into where we're more connected to everything and everyone. But we also need to be in our own power for this, okay? You need to stay in your own power with your own boundaries, okay? And you need to be able to state your own truth within yourself. That's really important. Because we have been sold a lot of things, and we have been weaker than water at times, where we've allowed all sorts of things to control us. And we need to stand in our power and be able to be our own divine sovereign self, right? And when we're our own sovereign self, we can say, no, that's not for me. And this is for me, because there's a ton of information coming out at this point in time, and you need to be able to resonate with what resonates with you. And that's it, because this is, again, like I talked about earlier about the past, it's subjective. So is your reality subjective. It isn't a group reality in the sense that you have your own reality within you that's unfolding. And that is so important. And if everybody caught that, what would happen with that beautiful thing would be that people would catch that idea and realize that they don't have to argue or fight or anything with anyone. They can simply walk out and create their own beautiful reality with plants that sing to them and, animals and, all the fun stuff, right? And I know that a lot of us are moving into that consciousness anyway, being more connected with the animals and more connected with nature and more connected with all of it, and this is good. We're also watching the collapsing of the control matrix, and that looks spooky, but really it isn't. It's honestly happened before in history, not the history they teach you, but it's happened before in history. We have risen to heights and came down and back up and come down again, and this is only when we experience the level of attempt of control to this level that it falls apart. You cannot stop the human spirit. It's unbounded. And when you step back into your own power as a sovereign being and say, I am an unbounded spirit, right? You can try to control me, but I just turn and manifest what I want in my life. And you manifest yourself out of it. So I'm going to open up the chat screen and see if anybody has any questions for me tonight. So if anyone has questions, please put them in the chat. There's no questions. That's it. Man, that was a short show. I guess so again, we are free. We are freer than what we've been told, which means that you, in the proper use of the pictures in your head, the way that you picture things, what you say to yourself and what you feel, if we not only take what from the outside world, we process the pictures. I mean, we process what we're seeing, we process what we're hearing, and we process what we're feeling from the outside world. But if you were to stop and start to process that on the inside, and you started to play with that on the inside, having your own pictures, seeing your own thing in your imagination, putting your own tones to it, and feeling, allowing it to shift your feelings, now you're starting to play with what's called emotional alchemy. where you can make the change in here and then the outside starts to change, right? So, how many of you have experienced that sort of thing where you're moving through the images, you add new pictures, you see a real bright picture of you, right? And you add a sound to it, a song to it, and all of a sudden your feelings start to change. Well, like I showed you on that timeline, you're projecting now into your timeline. So then now experiences start showing up with that vibration in it. So when you start playing that way, you start to see how free you can start to be, because we're not locked into anything ever. We're not. We're convinced we are, but we're not. And as soon as we start self-actuating like this and moving that out into our world, we can start all sorts of things, healing processes for yourself. The sky's the limit, and even beyond that, right? Jessica has a question here. So Jessica's asking about mantras and saying them aloud. Yeah, they're very powerful as long as you're still connected to them. Because once it moves into an area where it's an everyday thing to do, then it's lost its effectiveness. I mean, I say certain things that are probably a little bit different than what other people say, and maybe the same thing, I don't know. But I say things like, "Oh, my beloved God, that I am, come forth into power, into wisdom. Awaken me," right? That's when I was really in a rough spot back when I was a child and severely learning disabled. I would recite that sort of mantra to myself and awaken me. I could still feel the goosebumps. So if it's still giving you the goosebumps, still use it. Otherwise, adjust it, and make it something of your own to say, because that's important too. I am that. I am that watches my thoughts. I have never been born, nor will I ever die. I am eternal. I say things like that to myself. It helps. Now, Holy Stone. Hi, Dwaine. I only just found this a funnies. I had a wee look on your YouTube. I guess I'm meant to hear something. Oh, okay. Lars. So, blaming our disempowerment on the 1% is something we do that holds us in bondage. I think so, Lars. I really do. I think that that's part of what they're doing. I think is to get us upset, because remember, it's not about money for them. It's about them feeding off of emotion. So it's not about money anymore for them. It's about power. It's about emotion. And if they can have the vibrational frequency of the planet down here, they're really feeding, right? And as soon as you raise the vibration in yourself to freedom, you no longer become used to them. So I'm thinking, Lars, that what's happening is that it's a trick. It's a trick to get us to get pissed with them, upset with them, all of that stuff, and now we're in a low vibration, right? So raising the vibration. And Lars, I still fall into it because I have the warrior within me, and I see some things and I'll do some, and all of a sudden I'm like, and I'm right at it. I just want to, do something about this. And then I step back and I realize, hey, I'm saying I used to talk about this, that our what we become emotionally involved in is actually our prayer, and that we're praying to the God we choose, right? And that if I'm angry and I'm going to go postal, that's really I'm feeding the wrong God at that point in time. I'm believing more in fear and control than I am that I can have the freedom to move beyond it. I hope that makes sense, or I have explained it well enough to you, Lars. Okay, where am I here? Lisa's asking, how many sessions would a person need to overcome this? Well, when I do the deprogramming aspect of it, like I say, I have a 4 session package there. We get to explore where you are, where you want to be, what it's going to take to get you there. So 4 sessions, usually, right? Now, some people that have had a lot of work done or, are ready, 1 session can do it as well. But in a program, and I'm not just selling the program, it's just that you have more benefit with the program because we start to unfold each step of the way. Because once you release one thing, say the critic, and you come back into the loving voice within yourself, then the next step we would want to work on would be empowering you again, right? Because the critic has taken a lot of power away. We want to look at what else has been controlling you, right? So what else has been controlling you could be, past disempowering experiences and whatever. We want to move through that swiftly and get you to the next level of empowerment, right? And then accessing the actual, free being that you are and start to explore that. So we'll do that in 4 sessions. The 4 sessions that I offer is discoveries, really, because I have no idea where you're at when you come to me. And so we need to, with the 4 sessions, we go through really your own personal discovery and pull out of you. That's why they call me the source whisperer, because I pull the source right out of you. You're the source, right? You're that source energy, the God within. And so through working with pulling your own healing out of you, you see, that's the stuff that really sticks. My idea of a healing for you isn't going to stick. Your idea of the metaphors that you come up with, that is your translation of what's happening inside of you, is your transformation. That's so I hope that answered your question, Lisa. Okay, I don't know what's question here and what is conversation. Yeah, this is. I'm beginning to. Amanda has mentioned something here. Is that they want us to think they have more control than what they do, and I'm beginning to see that. And I'm beginning to see that even with other countries, they have this. The threat is bigger than what it is. Who they are, but you know, um, uh, as long as we just take a deep breath in, slowly exhale, and let it pass by. It's like the Charlie Chaplin speech, right? Dictators will die, and we move on. Um, the human race has been here for a long time, and controllers have come up and come down. Like I say, I've even seen it in the playground when I was a kid. King of the castle, and you'd get these two controllers that ended up ruling that top roost, and boy, and the game became no fun anymore, trying to climb the hill to get to the top of the hill. um, you know so we would all move off and just play our own other game, right? And the controllers were left there on the top of the hill. I think that's what's going to happen eventually, is that everybody will stop playing, right? Soldiers will stop going to war. uh, you know you never know, could happen. And it can happen in a swoop too. All of a sudden they get an idea and poof, that's it. We quit. We're done. And they walk away from it. Dana is asking, what's the best way to raise your vibration and keep it there? I'm easily distracted. What I like to do is set up an anchor. And what is an anchor? An anchor is something that you can either touch, hear, or see a certain color. And as you raise your vibration, you fire this anchor. and then you let it go, and then you come back to it and you fire it again. You raise the vibration, you fire it again. Now the two have gotten associated, so the touch also equals the vibration shift, or the tone that you hear in your head is the vibration shift, right? So how that works, and it's going to work on some of you, maybe not all of you at this point in time, but I have this ability of being able to raise my vibration, and then anybody's this kind of watching me, they'll raise their vibration too, and then I'm going to say a tone or do a tone. So here goes. I'm just going to raise my vibration, and as I raise my vibration higher and higher, those that are watching me can experience it too. And we're just going to do a tone. Right? A tone. You can also do anything else. You can touch your heart. You can, many times I use touching the heart, right? And that helps too. Now I can just go back now and just go, and just notice if you have shifted vibration and put it in the chat room. If you've went from one vibration to another vibration just by the tone, right? Now you can make up your own tone. You can hear it in your own head. You don't have to say it externally. But you can hear this tone inside. Now that might have been too low of a tone that I used for you. It might have been angelic singing that you needed to hear. Go ahead and shift it and change it. And as you raise vibration, you just hear the tone, right? Now, then you come back and you let it go, and you're doing your daily things, and then you realize, oh, I've slipped vibration again. And then you fire your own tone inside your head. You know, and it might be a higher pitch that I can't do. And you go to that higher pitch, right? And all of a sudden, there you are, right? So by being able to do that tone, now give it over to the god or the goddess within. Say, okay, whenever I start going down, I'd like you to fire that tone for me, please, and thank you. And the god within, the goddess within, will fire that tone for you, like it beats your heart automatically for you, and it breathes you for you automatically. It can do so many things automatically for you if we just started to explore it. But remember, that whole part of us, they told us was a no thing, right? Yeah, but it wakes you up first thing in the morning before the alarm clock goes off, so you don't have to hear that damn noise. And it wakes you up. Who's tracking time? That's why I say I don't call it a subconscious anymore. I call it either the greater than conscious mind or the God within, because I know that there's much more going on with that part of us than we've been told. And we can start to explore what we can do with it. So other people are experiencing as well a shift in vibration just by doing that. It's so interesting, like, you know, like as an empath, right? And most of you are empaths, right? Probably a lot of you are empaths. And as an empath, you can receive all of this, but you never thought that you could project it. You can project a vibration as well, because that's part of owning, receiving, and sending and receiving, is that you can actually send a vibration as well. And when you send a vibration, you can send a vibration of joy, giddiness. I mean, you could start laughing for no reason at all. And I'm projecting that vibrational frequency to you, and you're picking it up for those that feel that. And then you can also go the other way. You can go into a deeper trance state. You can go into that. And see, we have abilities far reaching, far beyond what we've been told. And these can be very, very useful and helpful for people to go into deeper states. I had the wonderful privilege of working for a place where they accidentally had the machines hooked up wrong. It was the David machine over here. This machine. And this machine will take you into deep trances, like quick. You have glasses you wear and headphones you listen to, and there's the tones that go off and flashing lights, and drops you into trance state. But being that they had it hooked up wrong, the guys that came in and hooked it up, they hooked it up wrong. I was hearing the tones, the theta tones, all day long, day after day, going into states of theta and deeper, even in delta, with my eyes open. And so I learned a neat little trick is how to adjust brainwave patterns while I'm sitting here talking with somebody. And so I could be talking about anything, like, I don't know, flying an airplane, and just start going into that trance, and then other people feel that too. Or I can flip it and I can go into, absolute states of joy inside, and people feel it too. So for the empaths out there, just know that you can not only receive all of this information, you can also project it. And that's very, very helpful and healthy for people, because as you project it, they'll go into a state of being that you're projecting and not even know that they did it. They just feel good. And then they have blown a belief system when they do that, because they never thought that they could go into that state. And once they're in that state, then it's easy for them to go back to that state. So who's this here? Tierra wants me to teach an anchor, an easy one with a heart touch. Well, I want you to think about, everyone that wants to participate in this, think about love. Think about something you love, someone you love. And as you think about that person, as you think about that animal, as you think about that plant, as you think about that love that you feel in your heart, you can just reach up and touch your heart. Actually, it works well too when you take that feeling and you love yourself with it. Love yourself. Think about you as a little boy or a little girl. And if you were to come across you at the age of 5 or 6 years old, wouldn't it be nice just to give that little you a hug, and tell him some things, or tell her some things that you needed to hear back then, and just love her and love him, right? And just feel that love for self. Now, you can take the anchor off, the hand off your heart, and you can go around and do whatever. And then you can come back and touch that again. And feel that love for self. It's kind of a showstopper. That love for self. So that's how you set up an anchor. You feel the feeling and then you press, right? Now, you can do that for many other things. You can think about successes that you've had and use your fingers and just start stacking successes, right? You can put your fingers together and fire all those successes that you've had in your life, right? But I'm going to tell you right off the bat, if you get rid of the critic, then you're going to have a better time of it. Well, that is interesting. So I'm hearing more and more people here talk about that, about the fact that they've had some success with this. So that's a touch anchor. If you think about you know, a sliding switch, you know, the one that brighter and dimmer, right? Right? And if you think about, I'm going to use my arm as an example so that you see what I'm doing. But if you take and you have a feeling here, and I do this a lot with people as well, is that if you have a feeling here that you're in now that's kind of like, you know, not great, but you do remember having this feeling here where you were in a higher spiritual state, and you just start to access that higher spiritual state by remembering it. That's what activates it. This is part of what's called emotional alchemy, is being able to not just disassociate your emotions, but actually have control as to what emotion you want to feel. And so here you are, you're in your high spiritual state, access that, remember where you felt it in your body, breathe in and expand that higher spiritual state, and then click onto this end of your arm or table or whatever. It doesn't have to be your arm, but it could be the table or whatever, right? And click on that, okay? Now, you come back down here, and this is where you're at, and you start to slide up. Only at the rate and speed you can change your emotional state, right? Boom, right? And so whenever you catch yourself in this state, you slide that up, and you turn this back up. You can use that on your leg. You can use that anywhere. It's called a sliding anchor. And you can go into high spiritual states at your own will. Now, you can transfer this into not only a sliding anchor, but an increasing sound frequency inside your own head, like, oh, and you're in that higher spiritual state. You know, it might be higher yet for you because I can't go that high, but yeah, I think you get my point. Is that we're freer. Remember, it's only the emotions that have us trapped. They emotionally trap us in fear. And so when you can raise vibration out of that, well, guess what? It's a whole new world when you have emotional freedom, emotional alchemy. And again, this isn't saying, okay, emotions are bad, don't have them, because we've went through that before, and that didn't go well, right? It created kind of an oligarchy, you know, where people were disconnected from their emotion. But if you simply realize that this is the emotion that you're in at this point, and think about where you would like to be emotionally, and you can't think about it without going into it to some degree, right? Because as you start to think about it, what joy feels like in your heart, and how it expands and how you get giggly, you know, the next thing you know, you're in that, right? And you really went from here to here already, right? But I like to set up these sorts of sliding anchors. I did this one time way back before I was even a hypnotherapist. And how I learned how to do this thing is I worked for a union, and we used to have to go for roll call, you know what I mean, to get it placed on a job somewhere. And so I went into roll call, and that day, and I really needed the job because rent was coming, and poof, you know, and uh, didn't get the job. I went home, and I was really, really sad. And I was sitting there really sad, and I thought to myself, well, this isn't going to get me anywhere because I'm just going to keep creating more sadness and more experiences like that. So how do I want to feel? I asked myself. Well, I want to feel like this, and I actually put an image up in my mind. I put an image up here of me in the state that I wanted to be in, right? Which was joy, you know, everything's working well, whatever, right? And then down here was what I was actually feeling. I was feeling this down feeling. And so, like you do with your mouse, drag and drop, I clicked on this bottom feeling inside of me, literally, and started to slide that image up at the rate and speed that I could change my emotional state. And I dropped this feeling here, up here, and I was feeling this feeling, and the phone rang, and it was the union hall. I picked it up, and they said, we had one more job come in. Do you want to take it? That quick, you know? And so my life has been fun like that. It's been very magical because I believe in magic. I believe that nothing holds us in any one spot, but our own belief in it, that it's holding us. We're much freer than we can think. And that's how I run my therapy as well. When you come in and you're stuck, I help free you. And sometimes it pisses people off, but because they want to stay stuck, or they can't believe that it could happen that quickly. But it does. We are living magic. We are source itself. And when we can transform things like this really quickly in our lives, it feels so good. You feel so free, right? Because you were never trapped. You're never really trapped. So Jessica talks about stopping a nervous habit or tick. So um, that is, I've worked on that. I've done that. Just to explain it, it's kind of like to try to explain it, how to work on that, because that's really an unconscious response, right? It's a tick, you know, and it's a communication. Now I I have a tendency to listen to that. Something happened at that time that you started to get that, and I have a tendency to go back to the event, to the thing. I start talking to the communication itself because it's trying to communicate something, right? Um, and so I go back to that communication, and we can start to uh, explore why that nervous tick is there, right? And once we explore why that nervous tick is there, in the sense of what started it, what or not even, you may not even know that, but what is going on with it, we can explore it and start to shift it and change it. Sometimes just reframing what's going on, changing it a little bit, is very helpful in that regard as well, in letting go of it. Uh, Brenda, can you attach those memories and emotions to certain smells? Yes, of course you can. Uh, and then when you smell those specific smells, you can raise that way? Of course you can. I'm going to mention something to you, Brenda. Fresh baked bread. Where did you go when I said that? See? That's an anchor. Fresh baked bread. And we go back to the time. Some of us go back to Grandma's house, some go back to our own mother's house. Sometimes it's a bakery. But there's something about fresh baked bread that, poof, you see, that is an anchor. And so you can use smells as an anchor. That's why we have incense, is because incense is a smell anchor to bring us back to a state of mind. Okay? We get out into the universe spinning out, in spirals, spinning out. We get out there sometimes. And sometimes all we need to do is come back home to yourself, to come back home. And sometimes the smell, when utilizing meditation in these states, sometimes when you smell that incense, I mean, yet today, Nag Champa does it for me. All I do is light Nag Champa, and I'm back in that state again. So smells can be that for raising vibration or higher spiritual, of course, yes. Uh, So I'm just looking through here, see if I can find any more questions. Someone had a haircut here, I see, and from the haircut they created a giggle button. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, I offer. Tiara's asking, do you offer custom sessions? Some of us probably work on certain things. Yes, I'm always open to customize sessions, right? Basically, and that's how I teach it to my interns. I teach them the structure, the skeleton structure, and then they need to put in that skeleton structure the client's information, because I find that when doing this dehypnotizing program, that people really do need to have their own content in it. This is about them. This is about you coming out. This is about you leaving behind the fear matrix and stepping into creation. And only you have that connection to source energy. And it's your specific way to do that. So when you come to sessions or you come to training, you're not going to get a cookie cutter, you got to learn this, you got to do this. You're going to have to work with what I call flying by the seat of your pants with people, because each person that comes in is uniquely different, and you've got to be able to utilize what that person has at hand in order to build and construct a change program for them, right? Utilizing the understanding of the base theory of how humans function, how humans work. Because how humans work comes from the inside, not on the outside. And so on the inside, they have pictures they see in their mind, words they say to themselves, and they generate feelings. And that can also be smell and taste as well. And they construct reality inside of themselves first before it ever hits the outside. And so you need to be able to understand that hypnosis is the process of structuring inside of you. So we're all hypnotists. All of us. Anytime that you tell a story to anybody, they're making sense of that story inside of their mind. Right? So now if you get really good at telling stories, you're going to get really good at making changes in people, because they take everything, that input, bring it inside to make sense of it. And so this is the big thing that I figured out, because I got into hypnotherapy to learn what they were doing to us. And then I started to see it because of the television. Everything, the visual, the auditory, is being bombarded with a certain concept or idea that we take in, and then we create the feelings to add to it. And this becomes our reality. So they teach you how to be in the world, right? Yeah. Oh. Well, I guess that's it. I don't see any more questions. Thank you, Lars. Thank you, Amanda. Tiara. Pam, you're here. Good. Well, I guess that's it for tonight. Thank you, everyone, for coming out and spending an hour with me. And I look forward to doing it next time, next week. We had that break at Easter time. I hope that was Easter for Canada. I guess the bunny hops in different places at different times. And that's okay, right? And well, thank you everyone for coming out, and again, and we'll be I'll be back here next week, same time. Blessings, and have a delightful week.